Why did the Soviet Union, once a superpower, split into pieces? After World War II, the Soviet Union emerged as a global titan, standing toe-to-toe with the United States. But being a superpower came with its own set of challenges. The Soviet Union was a behemoth, spanning 11 time zones and housing a myriad of ethnic groups, each with its unique culture, language, and aspirations. This diversity was not just a source of richness, but also a colossal challenge. Maintaining a semblance of unity across such a vast and varied landscape was no small feat. The Soviet Union had to grapple with regional disparities, ethnic tensions, and the colossal task of centralizing control over its sprawling territories. The seeds of discord were sown early, and the cracks began to surface sooner than later. Yes, the Soviet Union, a global superpower, was not without its internal struggles. The Soviet Union's economy was plagued with inefficiencies and stagnation. The central planning system, while ambitious, often fell short in execution. Industries churned out machinery, but consumer goods were scarce, and quality suffered. This led to long lines for basic necessities, a stark contrast to the prosperity seen in Western societies. In tandem with economic troubles, political repression became a hallmark of the Soviet regime. The government quashed dissent, favoring a uniformity of thought that left little room for debate or criticism. Those who dared to voice their discontent were met with swift and often severe repercussions, fostering a climate of fear. Yet beneath the surface, dissatisfaction simmered. Soviet citizens looked to the West, to the freedoms enjoyed by their counterparts, and yearned for the same. So the seeds of dissent were sown. Economic struggles and political repression, while designed to maintain control, inadvertently sparked the desire for change. Enter Mikhail Gorbachev with his ambitious plans for reform. Gorbachev, who took office in the mid-80s, introduced two key reforms: Glasnost, or openness, and Perestroika, or restructuring. Glasnost sought to increase transparency and freedom of speech, shedding light on the hidden corners of Soviet society. Perestroika, on the other hand, aimed to revitalize the economy by incorporating elements of free market capitalism. These reforms were meant to modernize the Soviet system, to breathe new life into a stagnating superpower. However, they also had unintended consequences. Glasnost allowed suppressed nationalist sentiments to surface. Citizens began to openly question Soviet rule, demanding more autonomy. Perestroika, while aiming to boost the economy, often led to confusion and economic instability instead. Gorbachev had hoped to strengthen the Soviet Union, but his policies inadvertently accelerated its demise. Nationalist movements gained momentum, fueled by the newfound openness and the economic uncertainties. Gorbachev's reforms, while well-intentioned, inadvertently stoked the fires of nationalism. Nationalist movements began to gain momentum within the Soviet republics. As the Soviet Union's grip started to waver, the diverse ethnic groups that had been under its control for decades began to assert their distinct identities. From the Baltic states in the north to the Central Asian republics in the south, the desire for self-determination was stirring. These movements were not just about political independence, they were driven by cultural, linguistic, and historical factors that ran deep into the fabric of these societies. In the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the call for independence was particularly strong. These republics were among the first to declare sovereignty, setting a precedent for others to follow. Ukraine, with its deep historical ties to Russia but a growing sense of national identity, also began to voice its demand for independence. The clamor for independence was growing louder by the day. Economic strains and ethnic tensions escalated, leading to conflicts and calls for secession. The once mighty Soviet Union was now a simmering pot of discontent, with its republics yearning for autonomy and its economy on the brink of collapse. Economic hardship was widespread, as the centralized planning model proved ineffective in meeting the demands of a diverse and expansive population. The cracks were showing, and ethnic tensions were rising. The Soviet Union's tapestry of cultures and languages was unraveling, tensions flaring among different ethnic groups. These tensions often erupted into conflicts, further destabilizing the region. Then came the pivotal moment in August of 1991, a coup attempt by hardline communists aimed at seizing power from Mikhail Gorbachev. It was a desperate bid to preserve the Soviet Union, but it proved to be a colossal failure. The coup collapsed within 3 days, largely due to widespread public opposition, led by Boris Yeltsin, then president of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. This failed coup was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. It exposed the fragility of the Soviet Union's political structure and further fueled the desires for independence among its republics. The failed coup marked a turning point, accelerating the Soviet Union's dissolution. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union officially dissolved into independent states. The world watched in stunned silence as a superpower unraveled. The once formidable Soviet Union, spread across 11 time zones and composed of 15 republics, was no more. This disintegration was not just a political event, but a seismic shift that sent shockwaves around the globe. The Cold War had ended, and the bipolar world had suddenly become unipolar, with the United States standing as the sole superpower. In the wake of the dissolution, Russia emerged as the largest successor state, inheriting the nuclear arsenal and the permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. Yet it was a nation in turmoil, struggling with economic hardships, political instability, and a diminished role on the global stage. Each of the new republics faced their unique challenges, from building new governments to managing ethnic tensions. Some transitioned to democracy and market economies more smoothly than others. The Baltic states, for instance, quickly integrated into the West, joining both the European Union and NATO. The breakup of the Soviet Union brought an end to the ideological clash of the Cold War, but it also gave rise to a new world order. The geopolitical landscape was forever altered, with new nations finding their place in the world and old alliances being redefined. In just 7.5 minutes, we've explored why the Soviet Union broke apart. The desire for self-determination, economic challenges, and political reforms all played roles in this historic transformation.